Hello guys, in this video, we will learn about functions in the Python programming language. When we talk about a function is a named block of code that performs a specific task. So basically, we have two types of functions in Python, built-in functions and user-defined functions. Built-in functions are some general purpose functions that are already written into the Python programming language. So we just have to use them. On the other hand, user-defined functions are written by programmers to suit specific needs of their program. Now, let's look at the main advantage of using a function. The main advantage of using a function or functions is because of what we call code reusability. They make our code reusable and reduce code duplication. Therefore, by following the dry principle, which is don't repeat yourself. So let's go ahead and look at how we can define and then execute or run or call a function in Python. So in order to define a function, we start with the def keyword and then followed by the name of our function and then parentheses and colon. So in order to define a function, we write the def keyword, the name of your function, and then what? A set of parentheses and then colon. And then in the indented block of code, you put in your function body. So I'll just say print hello, welcome to functions in Python and save. So by so doing, I have defined a function and I have just put in this print statement over here in this function. So in order to define a function in Python, again, you write the def keyword, the name of your function. It can be any name. There are some conventions. The name of a function cannot start with a number or something. As you can see, my IDE is even giving me what? An error. So you can't write the name of a function with what? Or start the name of a function with what? Number. In case your function is more than one word, you should use underscore. So maybe greet user. So you should use what? Underscore. And this is a convention. You can use this as well, camel case. But in Python, we normally deal with what? A snake case. So maybe greet user or something. So I'll just name my function greet, and then we put what? A set of what? Parentheses. In a later example, we'll look at what we can put in this parentheses, and then this is just a simple function. So let's see what will happen when I try running my code. So I'll use Python and then main.py. When I run my code, you see that nothing is printed in the console or in the terminal, even though I put this print statement over here. So what is happening now in Python? Whenever we define a function, we have to call the function, or in other words, we say we have to what? Execute the function or run the function. So how do we call or run the function? Good. In order to call or run the function, we write the name of the function, and in this case, greet, and then a set of parentheses again, and then this is how we what? Run the function. So when I go ahead, clear my terminal and run my file again, now we can see our message printed in the terminal, which is hello, welcome to functions in Python with a smile. So this is how we can define and what? Execute a function. So anytime we define a function, it will just be lying there in the code, but it will not do anything until we call it or we execute it or we run it. So this is what we refer to as what? A user defined function. And we are in Python too, we have built-in functions. So built-in functions like the range function, the sum function, a lot of them. There are a lot of built-in functions in Python, and these are utility functions that we get from the batteries included Python or in the Python standard library. So we know that Python is a batteries included programming language which has some functions pre-written for us. So those are what? Built-in functions. But we can also build or define our own functions, which are user-defined functions. So this is just a simple function in Python. You define a function with the def keyword, the name of the function, the parentheses, and then colon, and then in the indented block, we put in our function body. We can put in an if statement, for loop, whatever logic we want to put here. We can even define another function here. So I can say def and say another function like this, and then I'll say print, not that, print hello from the inside function like this. Now let me go and run my code. Let's see what will happen. So when I run my code, you see that we don't get a print statement from this function. Why? Because we have to call the function. So I'll go ahead and then call this function. I'll say another function like this. So just to show you that we can write a function in what? Another function. So now you can see that we have hello from the function, hello, welcome to functions in Python, and then finally hello from the inside function. So first of all, when the file is being executed or the script is being run, this function will be called. It comes to this function, prints this statement, and then go back, and it comes back and looks at this function call over here and goes to this function and then executes its code or its logic, and then it what exits the function. So that is what is happening here. So now let's move on and look at how we can make our function dynamic by passing in what we call what? Arguments. So I'll go ahead and then comment this function out. So I'll define a simple function. I'll say def greet user, and in the parentheses I'll pass in what we call what? Parameters. So I'll say it will take the name, and then over here I'll say print I'll say hello, then the name, welcome to Python functions. Just simple print statements. So now what we have to do is what? We have to what? Call the function by writing the name of the function. In this case, it is called what? Greet user. Now, after writing the name of the function, you can see that I'm even getting an error over here that what? Argument missing for parameter name. So since this function is taking a parameter, whenever you call the function, you have to pass in what? An argument. So first of all, I'll not pass in an argument. So I'll go ahead and try running my file. Let's see what you get. So you see that we are getting what? Type error. You can see that greet user function missing one required positional argument name. So whenever you pass in a parameter to a function and you are calling the function, you have to pass in what? An argument. So I'll just pass in an argument of what? Bob. So first of all, let me just change this to, let's say, user name to make it more understandable than name. So now when I go ahead, run my file again, now you see that we have hello Bob, welcome to Python functions. So that is it about what? Passing in parameters or arguments to our function to make them what? Dynamic. Now one thing you have to note is that whenever we define functions in Python, we can call them multiple number of times. So I can go ahead and call this function and pass in another name. Let's say here I'll pass in team, and then another one, and then I'll pass in, let's say, Alice, and save. When I go to my terminal and run my file, you see that all these functions have been called with their respective what? Arguments. You can see hello Bob, hello team, and then hello Alice. So that is it in Python. So whenever you write a function, that's why we said a function is good for what? Reusability. Okay, so whenever I write a function, we can call it any number of times in Python. So one thing we can also do is that we can pass in any number of what? Arguments to a function by indicating that number of what? Parameters. So let's look at another example, or I can just go ahead and say this function will take in the age argument, and then I'll just go ahead and then just print the age over here simply by just saying age over here or something. Okay, I'll change this to hello. Hello, my name is something. Hello, my name is, and uh, and I am. Then I'll put the age here. Yes, old, so that I'll just remove this from here. So now whenever we are calling the function, you have to pass in what the argument for the number of parameters you have assigned to the function. So over here I'll just say, let's say 20. I'll put here 40, and here I'll put here what 90, and save. And when I go ahead, clear my terminal and run it again, now you see, hello, my name is Bob and I am 20 years old, in that order. So that is it. So I can go ahead and then even pass in maybe favorite maybe color or something, and maybe that will be a list or something. So you can pass in any number of what variables or parameters or arguments to what a function. So let me comment this out and then give you another example. So I can say def add numbers function. So this will take in two numbers. So I'm passing in what parameters. So whenever I call this function, I have to pass in this number of what arguments to the function. So I can say print a plus b. So whenever I call this function add numbers, I have to pass in what the arguments, the appropriate arguments. So when I go ahead and then clear my terminal and run my file, you see that we are getting what 30. So when I go ahead and then just copy this down, change the values quickly to some random values and run my file, you see that we are getting those dynamic results. So that's it about passing arguments to what a function. The next thing I want us to look at is that we can return from a function, or returning values from what a function. So I'll still use my add numbers function again. So I'll say def add numbers, which you take in let me say first number, let me write that properly, and then maybe second number, my colon, and over here instead of printing I can say return. Then I'll return what first number plus what second number, and save. Now so with this I am what returning from this function. So let's see what happens when I call this function and pass in my numbers, and then maybe 30. Let's see what happens. So I'll go to my terminal, run my file. You see that we don't get anything outputted from the in the console, or anything outputted in the console. Why? Because this function we are not printing to the console, but what we are just returning whatever result or value we are getting, we are just returning it. So that return value we can collect it into what a variable. So I can say result, and I'll assign it to what the function call, which is what add numbers. Now I can go ahead and then print this result. So I can go ahead and print it. When I go to my terminal and run my file, you see that we are now getting what the value from the function. So that is it. So it's not always that you can print something from a function, but you can also return something from a function and then you can catch it later. Better still, one thing I can do is what I can say result value, or say result value, and I'll assign it to what the first number plus second number here. And then what I'll do is that I'll return the result value from the function. So you can also do it like this. If you don't want to just return the expression, you can also do it like this. Store the the value from the expression into a variable and then return that variable depending on what you want. If you like this, you can also do it like that, and then you are good to go. So this is about what returning values from what a function. Now let's look at functions with what default argument. A function where an argument has a default value, and whenever we are calling it. So let's look at an example. So I'll go ahead and then comment this out. So I'll still say def greet user. I know we have this already, but I'm just writing it again. So this will take the name and then the age. So let's say in case what we want to do is in case the name has not been provided, we want to set it to first of all, before I add the age, let's say in case the name is not provided, we can just pass in what? Guest. I'll say guest user and save. And then over here, I'll just say print. I'll just print what? Let's say welcome. Then I'll put in the name there and save. So what we've done over here is what? Providing what? A default argument to the function call. So whenever I call the function and then I don't provide any argument, you see now it is not complaining. I don't provide any argument. The default argument will be what? Use. So I'll go ahead, run my file. You see that it says welcome guest user. Now when I go ahead and then provide an argument of, let's say, Bob, and save and run my file again, you see that the value that we have provided will override the default argument. So it's now saying welcome Bob. When I copy this down and change this to, let's say, Alice, and run my file, you see that the argument you are providing is overriding the default argument. So this is how we provide what? Default arguments in what? Python. So I can go ahead. So one thing you have to note is that whenever there is a default argument and there are other arguments that you want to be provided, you should what? Always put them what? Last in the parameter list. So what we are doing here are what? Parameters. And whenever we are calling the function, we provide arguments to what? Those parameters. So these parameters will serve as what? Local variables in the function. So those serve as local variables in the function. So now the age. So whenever I'm calling the function, I can provide the age. So I can say age and I'll assign it, but we'll look at that later. So I'll just put 20 here like this. And then this one I'll just put, let's say, 30 or 40. I'm not even doing anything with it, so we don't see it printed out. So I'll just go ahead and then just put, like, let's say age, and then put age here like this and write that properly. Go to my terminal, clear it and run. Good. So we are seeing that as well. So that's it about default argument. So make sure that whenever you are providing a function with a default argument in the parameter list, they should always be at the end of other parameters. So over here I can go ahead and then put other parameters over there, and then the default argument parameter will be at the end. So let's look at another example quickly. Now we want to talk about what we call keyword and positional arguments in a function call. So a function can accept both positional and keyword arguments. So let's look at some example. So I'll say def describe underscore person. So this will take the name, the age, and then the country. So the country will put in a default parameter here. We say, or a default argument here called unknown. So I'll just say print name will be the name, then the age will be the age, and then finally the country will assign it to what? Country. So we are just printing over here. So over here I'll call the function. So I'll say describe person. So the positional arguments, this is where we just pass in what? The arguments without anything. So I can just go ahead. So the name, I'll put the name of Charlie here, and then with comma I'll put the age, let's say 30, and we are good to go. So this is what we call what? Positional arguments. So we are passing in the argument based on how we have defined the parameters. So I can decide to pass in the country. If I don't pass in a country, like we learned earlier, default argument, the default argument to be used. So when I'll do another one function call, and I'll put Alice here, and then I'll put a country called, let's say, the US over here like this, and save. So this one, the US argument over here will override the unknown. So I'll just go ahead and then run my file, and let's see the output. So you see that the first one, it is giving us unknown, and then the second one, it is printing the name of what? The country. So what we've done here is what? Positional arguments. So what you have done here is what? Positional argument. The next one I want us to look at is what? The keyword argument. So we can call a function with the keyword argument. So over here, I'll say the name, and then I'll assign it to Charlie. I'll just use the same thing. And then the age, uh, I'll say 20, and then I'll leave the first one out. I'll copy it down. This one I'll add the country, and I'll assign it to let's say US again, and save. Now let's go ahead and run the code. Now you see that we get the same results. Now one may ask, okay, let me just change the name here to Bob. One may ask, so what's the difference, or why this? Now with the positional argument, we have to make sure that whenever we are passing the argument should be passed in order, in the order in which you have defined the parameters. So we cannot just pass them anyhow. So for instance, when I comment this one out and then comment this one in like this. So let's say I remove the h from here, and then I go ahead and then write 30 first, then comma like this. Now you see that Python doesn't complain. So let me run my file and let's see what we'll get. Now when I run my file, you see that now it is assigning 30 to what? The name, and then age is now Alice, and then country US, because that one we didn't overwrite it, or we didn't change its position. Which we might not like, or which is the behavior we might not like. When I comment this one down, or move this one down, and then let's say I take the country from here and then I bring the country here like this and put comma here. Now when I run my code again, you see the problem that we are facing now. Now it is saying age is 30, which doesn't make sense. And sorry, the name is 30, which doesn't make sense. The age is US, the country is what? Alice, which doesn't make sense. So in this case, we can use keyword arguments to what? Resolve this. In order to prevent this, we can use the keyword argument. So with the keyword argument, I'll just comment this one in. When I go ahead and then I'll just cut this from here and bring the country first like this, and then I'll just try to just mix this out. Then I'll bring the age to here like this. It doesn't depend on what? The order in which we pass in the arguments. With the keyword arguments, it doesn't depend on the order in which we pass in the arguments. So when I go ahead and run my file, you see that we are still getting what? The correct results that we are expecting. So that's it with what? The positional arguments and then the keyword arguments. Now let's look at how we can pass a variable number of positional arguments to a function. And these variables or arguments will be packed into a tuple inside the function. So let's look at an example. So right now you've seen that our functions, anytime we call them, we can only pass in the number of parameters that we have defined to that function. So you see that this function takes how many parameters? 1, 2, 3 parameters. So we can pass only what? 3 arguments to it. So let's look at situations whereby we want to prevent this. We want a function that can take any number of what? Arguments, and it will still what? Work. So for instance, there are some built-in functions in Python that we can pass in any number of arguments to it and it will still work. So for instance, let's look at the sum function. So I can say print sum, and then I can pass in some random values quickly. Okay, this is supposed to be what? A list of numbers, I guess. Good. This is supposed to be a list of numbers. When I go ahead and run this, so it doesn't matter the number of numbers we pass to it, and then it will give us what? The result. Another one is I think the max also takes some numbers. Let me just put this quickly. Good. Let me just put some random numbers there. So this max function will give us what? The maximum value that is present based on the number of arguments we have what? Passed to it. So when I go ahead, run my file, you see that it's giving us 200. So when I copy this down, and then let's say I remove these two, let me just comment the sum out. and then go to my terminal, clear it and run it, you see that it is still working. It doesn't matter the number of arguments we pass to it. The last one, when I copy this down and then pass in more numbers, let me do this quickly, just passing in some random numbers quickly. When I go ahead and run my file, you see that it still works. So likewise, the main function and a lot of functions are there that takes in any number of arguments and it is okay to work with. So let's look at how we can also define our function like that. So what I'll do is I'll say def sum or, so we have a sum function in Python. So I'll define sum or. So in order to write a function that takes in a variable number of arguments, we use the star and then we use the args. Okay, we can use any parameter name, but the convention is to use what? Args in Python. So the Python community works with this a lot. So I'll say total is equal to, I'll use the sum function from Python, then I'll pass in my args here, and then what I'll do is I'll just say print sum of numbers, and then I'll pass in the total, and then what I'll do is again is I'll print the args so that we look at what the args are. So I'll clear my terminal, but first of all, what I'll do is let me comment this out and then let's see what is in the args first. So I'll go ahead and run my file. Okay, now you know why I'm not getting anything is because I'm not calling my function. So this happens a lot. So mind you, it can also happen to you. So I'll say sum or, I'll just pass in some numbers quickly, and then I'll copy this down, and then maybe pass in only 2 here. I'll copy this down, pass in more numbers quickly, and save. So let's deal with these 3. When I go to my terminal and run my file, now you see that this args parameter here is giving us what? Is packing all the arguments we have passed to it into what? A tuple for us. A tuple, because a tuple is what? Unique. So it's putting them into a tuple, and we can loop through it and do something. As you know, we learned about looping through what? A tuple and other sequences in what? Python. So that's what the args parameter, this star arg. So when I remove the star over here, it is a different thing altogether. Now it is now only one what? Positional argument, and as you can see, my editor is even what? Giving me error. But if you put the star over here, it is what? A tuple. So now let me comment this in now. Let's see what we will get when I go to my terminal and run my file. Now the first one, we are getting sum of numbers, sum of numbers 68, 158, sum of numbers 341. So that is it on what? Writing a function that takes in what? A variable number of what? Positional arguments. So this star args allows you to pass any number of arguments and they are accessed as a tuple within the function. Now let's look at the next one, which is what? The KW args, okay, or the keyword args. So I'll go ahead and define a function. Now the keyword args allows a function to accept a variable number of keyword arguments. So these arguments are packed into a dictionary inside the function. Now before we talk about that, let's look at something. I'll just comment this in. So let's say I have let's say a list of numbers. Okay, so I'll have a list of numbers, and then I'll just cut this and then put them here. Now what I'll do is I'll destructure these numbers to the function like this, and then go ahead and run my code, and you see that we still get what? The numbers being added. So what this star, passing this star before the argument here will what? Unpack the list. Okay, it will unpack the list of in this it will unpack this list and then pass those values in the list to what? The function. So when I go ahead and then remove the star, is now I'm just passing what? A list to the function, and when I run it, we will not get the appropriate what? Result. And you can see that we are getting what? Uh, an error, because we cannot this list is being passed as a whole to this one star args over here, but when I remove it, it will work for the last one, but it will not work for the first two function calls. So you should take note of that. So what I want to tell you is that what, when you don't like this, by passing all the values, you can just put them into a sequence like this, a list or a tuple, and then you unpack it and then send it to what? The function with this star over here. So this one will unpack the individual elements in the sequence, either a tuple or a list, and then this star over here in the parameter over here will take all those elements or items in the list or the sequence and then put them into what? A tuple, and then whatever logic you want to do with it, you are good to go. So that is it about that. So now let's go ahead and look at what? The keyword arguments. So I'll go ahead and define a function called print underscore info, and over here using keyword arguments, I'll say star star kwargs. So this one too, the parameter name is dependent on you, but in the Python community, it's a convention to use what? This parameter name for a variable number of what? Keyword arguments. So over here, what I'll do is I'll loop through it. So what this does is, unlike the positional variable, as like the one we look at initially, this one returns what? A dictionary and not a tuple. So I can say for key comma value in kwargs dot what? Items. So we learned about how to loop through a dictionary earlier. So I'll just say the key, and then I'll pass in what? The value over here and save. Now I'll go ahead and then call my function print info. Then mind you, this one takes in what? Positional arguments. Sorry, it takes in keyword arguments. Okay, it takes in keyword arguments. So I'll just say Alice, and then the age, I'll assign it to, let's say, 30, and then country, I'll assign it to what? USA, and save. Okay, over here I'm not printing the key. Now when I go to my terminal and run my file, now you see that it is giving us the results over here. So it will unpack the keyword arguments we've passed to it. It will unpack them and then iterate through them into what? A dictionary. So that is it about what the keyword arguments, taking a variable number of what? Keyword arguments, and then turn them into a dictionary, and then we can do whatever logic we want to perform to it. So just like what I've showed you initially, I can go ahead and then maybe define a dictionary called, let's say, person here, and then I'll just say name, I'll say Bob, and then let's say age, I'll put 20 here, and then country, I'll say USA, and save. And then I can go ahead and then call the function, which is what? Print info, and then over here I'll pass in what? The person object like this. When I go ahead and you see that first of all, let me see, let me just print star 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 like this. Go ahead so that we see the difference in the terminal. Good. So the first one, the values for the first one is when we are passing the keyword argument directly to the function call, and the second one is when we pass a dictionary, a variable, a dictionary variable, and then we are using this star star to what? Unpack the values to the function call. So that is it. So you can either go this way or the other way around. So that's it about what? The keyword arguments. So the keyword arguments allow you, the star star keyword arguments allow you to pass a flexible number of named arguments, that's keyword arguments, and they are accessed as a dictionary within the function. So before that, let me just go ahead and then print the keyword arguments so that we see it in the terminal as a dictionary quickly. So as you can see them here, so this is what the dictionary for the second one, and this is the dictionary for the first one. So that's all for this video. Please, if you like this video, please subscribe and follow for more videos and contents like this. Thank you for watching, and see you in the next one.